Well, the Red Cross is initiating a new program to help flood victims, and joining us to discuss this program is Stephanie Meyer. Nice to see you. Thanks for joining us. What is the new program?
The new program is one that will help bridge a little bit of the gap in between the time that the people who are out of their homes now can get back into their homes. If they're not staying in a shelter, if they are staying with friends and family or in a hotel, we will go ahead and award them a small grant to help them perhaps pay for some of the bills. You know, none of us like to impose on friends and family when we stay, even for a short vacation. And because these are such extraordinary circumstances, we wanted to provide some extraordinary assistance.
Now, you say that this is new, a new form of assistance, new to this particular flood or new to any disaster in the past?
Yes, new to the floods, new to any disaster, and in fact new to the Red Cross. Normally, most of our assistance kicks in as soon as the disaster is over. This one just keeps going. And we cannot provide the assistance or at least figure out what damage has been done until those people get back into their homes. So this is kind of a way to tide them over. It's a relief bridge.
Is there a ceiling amount that you're looking at for this temporary assistance?
Yeah, there are actually amounts that go up to only about $500, but that depends upon the number of people in the family itself.
Let's talk about that. Who can qualify?
At least. They should not have received any Red Cross assistance before. In other words, they should not have been staying in a shelter. We probably should not have provided them with any furniture or clothing vouchers or any sort of assistance. This is really for those people that have left their flooded homes. They're staying with friends and families, or they're paying for hotel bills. And this is just a way to help them kind of bridge that.
Bubbling under the levee, weakening it more.
And I know our situation here is nowhere near what down south of us in the Columbia area had suffered and down around Valmeyer. But on the other hand, we don't want to end up like that either. So I think that's why everybody's going that extra mile.
And so a frantic operation is launched to contain the danger.
The plan is right now where the boil is located at, it's hard to get access to it by foot. And to form a human chain to pass the sandbag.
Far, the boy is identified as a white male, about 13 to 14 years old. Again, that's just a rough guess by these women who are on I-255. He was wearing a red baseball cap. The witnesses say they saw him go over head first, his feet in the air, and into the water, and they are absolutely sure that he fell off the overpass. Police might be a little bit skeptical on a report like this, but they found the bike, and that's clear evidence that some child was in the area riding on I-255 for heavens knows what reason.
And they've thought that many times before. You're seeing the Mississippi north of downtown before it heads downstream and is held out of the downtown area by the levee system. And that levee system is holding after a day of ups and downs. When the day began, people here thought the river had crested at 49.5 at midnight. Crews did some patchwork, but the levee was still standing. Volunteers sandbagged to save an historic home. But the river still held some surprises. By noon, it was up to 49.63, 2/100ths of an inch under the 500-year flood level. Then down 3/100ths by 1 o'clock. Emotions ride up and down with the river stages.
It's played a lot of games, but it's another game it's thought of, I guess. We just can't wait for the crest, and we think it's here, but we're not, until it's past us, we can't be sure. We get surprised all the time.
Well, we just got some new numbers and some new surprises. At 2 o'clock, it was up to 49.67. That is 2/100ths of an inch over the 500-year flood level. By 3 o'clock, it was back down a little bit and under that mark. So it's like the river is taking its last gasp before going down. Back to you.
I think we've got some shoulder damage up this way, but basically the pavement's still in pretty good shape. We got some undermining where the shoulder was damaged, but hopefully in about 8 or 9 days when the water goes down, hopefully we'll be able to open this up.
Now, while we were out on Highway 40, we were able to capture some remarkable pictures of the road and businesses hit hard by the flood. You see some of them here. When the highway does reopen, you'll be able to see some of the devastation from your car. And tonight at 6, we'll give you a preview of the sights you'll be able to see when you drive along Highway 40. Some of them absolutely incredible. We found some birds that have kind of roosted along the area there. It's kind of an interesting and eerie sight to drive around.
It's become a migrant that's trying to hold the line near Wood River Creek. The sandbagging area is isolated in an industrial park area, so no homes are in danger. And some Alton residents have running water once again. Some 80,000 residents of the Alton area have been without tap water since The water plant went under floodwaters last Sunday. Alton's water system was linked up with other systems, including industrial plants, to get the water flowing again. The tap water is not safe to drink, even if you boil it. And babies and people with sensitive skin should not use it for bathing yet. Locations to get drinking water are still operating in the Alton area.
With the mighty force of Mother Nature. And so far, the fortified levees are holding their own, bolstered by constant repair work. The levee just north of the village still stands thanks to the hard work of sandbaggers. Volunteers from across the country are helping residents in replacing saturated sandbags. The controversial approach, you might recall, guiding floodwaters away from the town by dynamiting a hole in another levee, at this point seems to be working.
Well, with some of the waters going down now, it won't be too long until the cleanup gets underway in St. Charles.
Some people are already
13 years and has never seen this much water, and she considers herself lucky. Missouri poured into her garage and basement and left a hazardous problem behind.
We had some oil in containers in the garage that floated and dumped the oil, and we called the fire department to get the hazardous material team down here to try to clean it up.
And fortunately, they were able to clean up the mess. The Hammers' neighbors have a lot more water in their homes and will find similar problems when they return. It's a very slow process. The rivers will still be above flood stage until the end of August. Dan and Dan?
At least they have a home to go home to, and they can get home.
That's
Thanks,
true.
Sarah. Our expanded...
Some angry business owners in the Chesterfield Valley say their stores are flooded because officials were too cheap to build a better levee.
The levee district was trying to save money, but as Victor Ojeda reports, that same mistake could be made again if they don't get federal funding.
It's going to take a lot of money to build a bigger levee in the Chesterfield Valley. The mayor says they'll need $20 million to build a levee to withstand a flood of 500 years. Chesterfield can't afford to build a 500-year levee, can they?
No, sir. We do not have that kind of money.
The one that failed last weekend was built for a 100-year flood. That was all they could afford, and it was the bare minimum required. The move back then was to save money, but with 500 businesses, an airport, and a prison all underwater, many say it was the wrong decision.
Obviously, it should have been higher.
No matter how high you build your levee, you can't totally eliminate all risks. You're just making the risks smaller and smaller.
And Army Corps officials say it's not unusual for levee districts to build to the minimum requirements, but that's no longer good enough for business owners or Chesterfield officials. They're demanding the federal government step in and help pay for a 500-year levee.
Private enterprise can't do it. This is too big for that. It's like asking private enterprise to build a interstate highway. We need governmental help from all sides on this thing to do it.
Business owners say if the same mistake is made twice, they will relocate out of the floodplain. They say the loans they're being offered is a joke. They want grants to rebuild.
It's a tragedy that we can be sending off billions of dollars to Russia and Israel, and we can't get some relief here. Yeah, there's loan money available, but it is just that. It's loan money.
Would you come back here if they weren't able to build a 500-year levee?
I don't think I would, no.
In Chesterfield, Victor Ojeda, St. Louis 11 News.
Chesterfield police say a wave of business owners wanting to see their stores is causing them to ask for more volunteer John boats. As it stands now, most of the people trying to get to their businesses today were asked to come back tomorrow. The reason? Not enough boats to take everyone out. If you have a boat, check with Chesterfield Police or the Coast Guard before taking it out there, because there are safety requirements for each boat.
Next on St. Louis 11, 4 people die as a tornado rips up their Virginia town.
Lightning sparks a forest fire.
Well, officials say they started the pump early this morning, but it's going to take several days before full service is restored. It was last Sunday when floodwater invaded that water treatment plant in Alton, knocking out the service.
And Dan, the head of the Federal Emergency Management Agency, is scheduled to tour Alton tomorrow. James Lee Witt will visit the St. Louis area along with Agriculture Secretary Mike Espy. From Alton, Witt and Espy will travel to Prairie du Rocher, the Illinois town along the Mississippi, which appears to have defeated...
Residents, they cannot drink the water because it's contaminated. Full service back. The Alton Water Company is telling residents to boil the tap water before using it for any purpose. And it's an unusual scene in downtown Clayton caused by the flood. National Guard troopers positioned...
The effort was dramatic and difficult.
They knew it would be a difficult rescue, but they didn't know just how tough it would get. Humane Society volunteers, a veterinarian, and the Coast Guard today attempted a first, bringing out a donkey and 3 stranded horses from St. Charles County by boat.
You're just using a little common sense and a little kindness, and this ought to turn out all right for these animals.
The Humane Society had hoped to leave the animals here, asking neighbors to put up with the horses in their yards until they could be driven out.
I was so disappointed that we were doing everything we could, and yet the people of this community were still saying that they would not allow these horses up on their land. They didn't want their yards torn up.
And so the rescue began. The animals had to be loaded onto the boat for the 5 or 6 mile trip to dry land. The donkey went first, quietly, once it was on the boat. For days now, these animals have been standing in mud and high water. Even though they've been given food and water, the vet who came to check them yesterday said the rescue had to happen now.
Basically, inevitably, after time, the foot basically rots to the point where it's crippling to the horse. And to my opinion and everything, I wanted the horses out and on dry, safe ground.
With the donkey safe, they turned to the first of the horses, hopeful it would go as smoothly. But this horse was more frightened, and despite efforts to keep it calm, the worst happened.
The horse got spooked. There was some wakes that come, and the horse wasn't sure of the footing.
The Coast Guard pulled the volunteer to safety, but with dry land several miles away, the horse was in trouble.
Basically, the name of the game was keep the horse's head above water, keep the water out of the lungs.
They pulled the horse along, fighting to keep it calm, struggling to keep it away from the propeller blades. Finally, they reached dry ground, both horse and humans safe.
Let's go get a couple more, people.
With 2 horses still waiting to be rescued, the crews headed back out with one last promise for the animals.
You're gonna be all right, you think?
Yes, ma'am, absolutely. We'll take good care of them.
I'm Lois Ford Long, News 4.
Now, we're told some of the residents in that area do not appreciate the fact that it was suggested that they're the reason the horses had to be pulled out so quickly and that they wouldn't do anything to help them. In fact, they said they had help, but those remarks had come from the Humane Society, not our reporter. The horse you saw rescued had to be walked through floodwaters to a waiting trailer. The vet says he expects that horse to be all right. All of the horses are now safe and rescued. They will be cared for, of course, by foster families. Many of you have helped flood victims by purchasing our neighbor-to-neighbor video.
One of the neighbors featured in that tape. Tonight, Laurie Waters shares this story of heartbreaking tragedy, but inspiring courage.
This is how Channel 4 viewers first met Ray Schultz in a news story, and later he was included in the neighbor-to-neighbor flood relief video.
What kind of shape is your house in?
Well, it's like everybody else. It's gone. It's gone.
Ray's home is somewhere out there. Since we first met him a few weeks ago, these floodwaters have continued to rise. Ray's family did escape the water, but they cannot escape heartache. That has followed them out of the flood.
Followed him to the apartment to which his family evacuated. During that evacuation, Ray's son, also named Ray, was a big help. You see him in the boat in the blue shirt. Now he's hospitalized in intensive care, paralyzed after a swimming accident at the new apartment.
This is my kid that was walking around 5 hours ago. We were out together having a good time.
Do you wonder why your family?
Things happen. You know, just things happen.
Ray is diabetic. He's blind in one eye and nearly blind in the other. But he's philosophical about his son's injury.
My eyesight is going bad. Maybe his eyes will be my eyes, you see, but I'll have his legs.
This is the Schultz's home. Water almost up to the roof. They have insurance on the structure, but not on the contents. Still, they're not bitter.
I can't throw in the towel. I got 4 other people counting on me. It's impossible. You know, just keep punching away. Eventually everything gets better. It's got to. Can't get any worse. You know.
You cannot harness that river. That river's going to make its own, and you're going to have to give up. I know it's tough. I know it's tough. This man is about 10 miles of land.
We're looking at your house. This man's sitting on the roof of your house.
See, 10 miles.
You can still say, give it up?
Yeah, give it up.
Ray says his friends have helped so much. Those friends say they're the ones who are impressed.
Ray is just, and Judy, they're just people. I couldn't do what they're doing.
They're remarkable. They keep bouncing back after every thing that seems to try to knock them down and this and that, and they keep getting back up and going.
This home had never flooded. When Ray and Judy start over, they won't be anywhere near a floodplain. But starting over is tomorrow's chore. Today's focus is their son.
You cannot be anything but strong, because there's nothing that I can do unless I do the same thing I've been doing every day and make sure everything's stable here and make sure the house is going and keep a normal situation for him. And he'll be able to deal with it if we treat it just like normal, too. You're no different, Ray. You're the same kid you were the day before. You're just going to have to try a different outlook.
This day is nearly gone. Perhaps tomorrow will be better. Lori Waters, News 4.
Now, two friends you saw in Laurie's story, Ray and Judy Schultz, want to thank the other friends who have helped them during their time of trouble.
A lot of work to be done.
But at least the House has moved federal help one step closer for flood victims. Representatives voted to send almost $6 billion in aid to flood-soaked Midwesterners. The bill now goes to the Senate. If it's approved there, it moves on to the White House for the president's approval. In downtown St. Louis, overcome by cats today. Cast members of the Broadway show, Cats.
But at about 10:15 that evening, the Monarch Levee gave way, and the Missouri River forced its way onto a rich area of farms, businesses, homes, and its anchor, the Spirit of St. Louis Airport. While the night picture seemed frightening enough, it was by the light of the next day that what we all feared became all too real.
The Monarch Levee gave way at 10:30 last night, and right now there is probably 5 to 6 feet of standing water on Highway 40, if you can imagine it.
Television news deals all too often in sound bites and spectacular aerials, damage reports and sandbags. What we many times neglect is the human element. Behind all the devastation lies people. The Spirit of St. Louis Airport in West St. Louis County is the second busiest airport in the state of Missouri, handling some 200,000 landings each year. With the flood last weekend came a loss of jobs, a loss of business, and a loss of the soul of this area's aviation community. Dick Rabko has been the manager of Spirit Airport for 29 years, dedicating his career to the Gumbo Flats of West County. So with this in mind, I went with him earlier today to look at the airport 1 week after the Missouri River forced its way in.
Early on, we had a lot of hope. We thought maybe we'd get out of it unscathed and that the levee would hold. There was a concern that the water was going to go over the top. And about 10:30, I was waiting for some emergency lights to show up to take back up onto the levee to help the folks up there so they could see, and got the call that the levee had broken and a 5-foot wall of water was approaching us from Otherton Road, which is about a mile from the end of the runway.
Being here for 29 years, seeing this place grow from, you know, a little strip out in the middle of nowhere to what it is today, for you to look out at the water covering your baby, it must have killed you.
Well, you know, we had the tears initially, but I think that you know, you got to put your nose to the grindstone and say you're going to recover. You're going to do it bigger and better than ever. A lot of people's livelihoods depend on this place coming back.
About a dozen aircraft perished in the flood. Their owners perhaps couldn't believe this would happen.
This airplane is a foreign aircraft that was in here for maintenance, and it was the only aircraft that one of our operators, JetCorp, couldn't get back together, and you can see why. There was a lot of work to do.
In between there and then the down back water was rolling up over the runway.
Well, I don't know. As soon as the water goes down, we're bringing in a consulting engineering team of disaster people to come in and evaluate everything, our buildings, our pavements, the whole bit. And we'll start doing some nuclear testing on the runway. And that'll tell us what the condition of the base is, which is our major concern, what's underneath the mud.
While the soul of this area has gone, it's gone for just a while. It and the businesses that are now in hiding will return, and the Gumbo Flats will be the area it once was, and then some.
Annie Guns in the Smokehouse will be back. The Wiegand family's been down this valley for years and years, and they'll be back. Rombachs are good gumbo farmers. They'll be back with good sweet corn next year.
Orville and Wilbur's.
Orville and Wilbur's is a tradition out here. It was the first building we ever built next to our terminal building. It'll be back.
Blaney's Restaurant?
Blaney's will be back, and you know, you got to have a good hamburger, and Blaney's is always a good place to get one.
Spirit of St. Louis Airport?
Spirit of St. Louis Airport's going to be back better than ever. You have my word on it.
Dick Rapko tells me that I'm supposed to be optimistic. About 90 days from now, limited service will be available for general aviation out at Spirit of St. Louis Airport. We'll let you know about the progress of their efforts out there and their involvement with the general aviation community to get things up and running again out at Spirit of St. Louis Airport. My thanks to Ron Erb for his editing expertise on this piece.
The first week of August is usually hot and sticky. August 1993 will be remembered as being wet. Flooding continues as the main, often only story in town. Sunday, rivers crested, levees broke, and traffic was a mess throughout the metro area. City officials evacuated a large area of South City and South County because of the threat of propane tanks exploding at Phillips Petroleum on Broadway. High water on the Mississippi is blamed for the breakaway of several vessels permanently docked in front of the arch. The Burger King and Taco Bell restaurants, the USS Inaugural Minesweeper, and a helicopter pad broke free from their permanent dock. City officials used barges to corral the runaway boats. Sunday night, sandbaggers kept up the vigil, frantically working to plug leaks in the levees. Monday, St. Genevieve residents were ordered to leave their homes or go to jail. Troubles began with Sunday's break in the Spring Valley levee. Officials feared other breaks because levees were getting weak. Alton residents learned it could be several days before they would have running water again. Floodwaters contaminated the water treatment plant. Alton officials also blame bureaucratic red tape, saying the city asked for more pumps more than 2 weeks ago, but never received them. Last call was sounded in Prairie du Rocher, where residents were told to evacuate. A cemetery in Hardin, Missouri is underwater, and hundreds of coffins have washed away. 962 caskets floated away. On Monday, officials retrieved 115 of them. Tuesday, flood fighters in Prairie du Rocher tried to change the course of nature. They broke down a levee and staged a controlled flood, allowing water to wash over farmland in an attempt to relieve river pressure. Missouri Governor Mel Carnahan toured flood-devastated Chesterfield Valley and promised state help when the cleanup begins. He suspects the flood damage in Missouri may already total at least $4 billion. St. Louis City voters went to the polls and approved 2 sales tax propositions. The propositions are expected to raise money for street and park repairs and also generate funding to pay for flood-related work and for police protection. A St. Louis police officer working undercover was shot in a draw in Prairie du Rocher, where volunteers had hoped they would beat the odds and were able to hold back the raging water of the Mississippi. Evacuated residents in South St. Louis found out they must remain away from their homes for a 4th day, while officials try to defuse the potentially explosive situation involving those Phillips propane tanks. The St. Louis potential became reality in Kansas City. Explosions and fire spread through a gas storage and distribution company. It is located near the Missouri River. But Wednesday night, we were told it was not flood-related. There were no reports or any injuries. The so-called Michigan suicide doctor, Jack Kevorkian, was present when another man took his life. Thomas Hyde suffered from Lou Gehrig's disease, and he inhaled carbon monoxide while his wife and Kevorkian stood by. Thursday, more trouble developed in East Carondelet, Illinois, where sandbaggers desperately tried to hold down sand boils festering in the levee. A tourist was murdered when she went down to the arch grounds to see the historic flooding. 56-year-old Alice Knopp of St. Charles and a friend were robbed in the parking lot. The robber did not think he got enough money, so he opened up fire on the couple. Alton residents found out they will soon have running water, but they are warned not to drink it. Water service should be restored to many homes within the next several days. The tap water is for sanitary use and should not be used for drinking. Friday, finally some good news for some South City and South County residents evacuated because of the propane scare. Many were able to return home for the first time in several days. For many, the focus will now be the cleanup. I'm Deanne Lane for the Week in Review.
With more flooding, but with the stress of what has happened. News Channel 5's Jennifer Blum reports on what you can do.
And everyone seems to forget them.
Then there's the disillusionment phase
where the media goes away, the public attention goes away, the support goes away, and people have to go back to the reality of their problems, their homes, the many, many problems the flood has created in their lives, and that's a very hard time for them.
Red Cross, the Mental Health Association, and the Missouri Department of Mental Health are teaming up to help. They're asking mental health professionals in our area to volunteer their time to counsel flood victims. That includes psychiatrists, psychologists, nurses, social workers, and therapists. Now, it's no problem if you've never counseled a victim of a natural disaster before. Free training sessions will be held.
After officials decided to reduce the evacuation area around those propane tanks in South St. Louis, but those was turned off. And the Army Corps of Engineers tells News Channel 5 this morning all area levees are still holding their own. The problem in East Carondelet, Illinois is sand boils, but so far those have been kept under control. Despite the leaks, the saturated levees in St. Genevieve continue to hold back the Mississippi this morning. And the governor of Missouri is holding a flood summit later today in Jefferson City. On hand will be the Secretary of Agriculture, Mike Espy, and the head of the Federal Emergency Management Agency, James Witt. Well, thousands of people have lost their homes or belongings to the flood of '93, but one image stands out along the many.
Last Sunday morning, I was in the Chopper 5 with Alan Barklage, and my partner Jeff Fowler was here in the studio, and many of you at home were watching as we all saw the Mississippi rip apart a farmhouse in Monroe County.
I think you have to wonder whether the house is going to be able, the home is going to be able to withstand the force of the water. That house is starting to go.
Oh, Jeff, it's unbelievable. There it goes. Just now, lifted off the foundation, and it's just crumbling in the rapid and the violent waters here that are coming through this levee break about 3 miles south of the Jefferson Barracks Bridge. We've watched the silos go, we've watched the barn go, we've watched a shed go, and now the house itself has been lifted off the foundation by these floodwaters. It's just unbelievable. The trees are actually snapping in two as well. It's just a tragedy.
Boy, you know, I could hear the emotion in your voice.
Oh, it's just...
What was it like to see that? I mean...
It was mind-boggling. I don't think any of us truly understand how much water has built up behind those levees in the Mississippi. And that's the same pressure that's still there this morning and that East Carondelet is threatened by, and DuPont, and all the other cities down south that are still...
Well, now that family was able to get out. Did they get everything out they wanted to get out?
They had evacuated the home quite a few days earlier, and as I understand, they got most of their possessions. But, you know, that's their 91-year-old farmhouse.
I think that's the one picture we will always remember. When you talk about the flood of '93, that's going to be the picture that you'll see so many times.
And we want to thank editor Ellen D. Filippo.
Only
improving. For the first time in 5 days, hundreds of residents may turn on their taps. But officials stress the water is too dangerous to drink, and boiling will not make it safe. The water may be used for laundry and bathing as long as it is not murky. Officials say they started the pump early yesterday morning, but it will still take several days before full service is restored. Officials stress the water is still too dangerous to drink, and boiling will not make it safe. The water may be used for laundry and bathing as long as it does not look
plant. Alton officials also blame bureaucratic red tape, saying the city asked for more pumps more than 2 weeks ago, but never received them. Last call was sounded in...
Westerners were relieved Congress finally approved billions to help clean up this mess. Much of it will go immediately to local governments drained by the scope of this flood. Hundreds of miles of highways need to be repaired. Cities and counties also spent millions evacuating and rescuing residents and trying to prevent floods. Some of the flood assistance will go to reimburse them. Approval of the aid package came just in time.
We had just about gone our limit with the existing funds that we had, so we were pretty close to having to cut programs to be able to even fund the disaster.
The Federal Emergency Management Agency gets $2 billion out of the aid package to help communities and residents, many of whom are still stunned by what happened to them.
We've lived here 21, 22 years, and we've never had water, never.
The biggest chunk of the aid package, $2.3 billion, will go to farmers who saw floodwaters not only claim crops waiting in the fields, but prevented many from planting anything more this summer.
I believe we're going to have to pass another bill in September or October when we better know the ultimate cost of this disaster.
Damage.
A bridge approach in Jefferson City, Missouri. Earthquake-like destruction. Hundreds of miles of railroad washed out. Highways chewed to pieces by floodwaters.
The streets were buckling and cracking and splitting, and water was coming everywhere.
Nobody knows better than Robert Taus, mayor of Alton, Illinois.
As you can see, we have several hundred tons of rock on the streets. Really, the purpose of that rock was to hold the streets down.
What are you going to find when you move the gravel?
Broken up streets.
The mayor of Alton has $100,000 in a contingency fund to make repairs.
I don't know. I estimate it's going to take about $4 million.
Just to do the street?
Just to do this street.
The second busiest airport in Missouri was under 10 feet of water a week ago. It's down to 4 feet now. The water drops and the repair bill climbs as the extent of damage to key elements of the region's infrastructure is revealed. John Gibson, NBC News, St. Louis.
York District is just as critical since the water will be high for weeks. Already one portion of the levee protecting the south side of town gave way, flooding some 40 homes. Jeff Krangle and Betsy Bethke drove 7 hours from Wisconsin to help save the rest of the town.
I have children, and I'd like to bring them back and show them this area.
But it will be some time before the townspeople can relax and entertain visitors. Right now, it's still an hour-by-hour battle to save history. Sandra Hughes, CBS News, St. Genevieve, Missouri.
Right now, employees of the Illinois American Water Company installed a temporary pumping system to restore the service, but water pressure remains low and everyone is being asked to conserve water. The water plant was knocked out by floodwaters last Sunday. A company spokesman says it will take another 2 weeks before tap water will be safe to drink.
When the distribution system loses pressure, it's subject to contamination from outside of the pipe. And our efforts are now to elevate the chlorine residuals leaving the plant to purge, and as we purge that water out of the system while we pressurize the system, we'll be disinfecting those mains along the way.
Everyone in Alton should have some level of water pressure restored within 2 days.
Weiss normally houses 150 planes. It's now home to over 400. And traffic has increased so dramatically that for the first time in the airport's 50-year history, FAA air controllers have been brought in. They are working out of a rented truck until a temporary tower can be erected. As many as 5 controllers will be assigned to each shift at Weiss until the large yardstick, the water level hovers around 44 feet. Remember, just a week ago today, it was over 49 feet. This area remains very popular attraction for tourists who want to see this flood of 93 up close.
It's nice to see
unprotected by its flood wall. South of here, the river is wider and deeper, and flood danger diminishes. Upriver at St. Genevieve, the crest hit Friday at levels higher than the predicted 500-year flood. But they're still filling sandbags because the danger of flooding remains. The worry in St. Genevieve is the condition of this temporary levee. It is saturated. It's been holding the river out for 6 weeks, but it is leaking and needs the help of pumps. The water level is falling, down 11 inches from yesterday.
That's a good start. 20 feet more would suit me. It'd still be above flood stage then.
In some places, soggy sandbags have failed, water even pushing debris through walls. In church, prayers for Genevieve, Missouri.
Now to the summer's other phenomenon, the drought of 93. Scattered rain fell across the southeast again today. Welcome relief to farmers who've suffered heavy crop losses. Bob Dodson on the beginning of the end of the drought.
Thank you for joining us today. Our Floodwatch 93 coverage begins this afternoon in Alton, Illinois.
There is finally a light at the end of the tunnel for flood victims there. This past weekend was the first one this month. Most people had water coming out of their taps. News Channel 5's Lisa Ziegman joins us live from Alton High School with some more good news for the people of Alton. Lisa?
Art and Jennifer, I'll tell you what, two of life's simple pleasures that sometimes we take for granted, but spend a week not being able to take a shower or go to the bathroom whenever you need to or you want to, and you'll know why the people of Alton are so happy today. They do finally have running water, and they got it this weekend. However, the drinking water remains contaminated, and area distribution sites are open. The water plant shut down August 1st when floodwater seeped into the Illinois American Water Plant, contaminating the facility. Officials are surveying the plant today, and there is substantial damage to the plant. Officials had been predicting it would be at least 2 weeks before the plant is running again. The FEMA office reopened today. Last Wednesday, I told you how FEMA pulled out only one day after the water plant shut down.
Reason for pulling out, we went 5 consecutive days with an average of 7 people in this deck. It was no longer necessary to keep it open. Nobody was coming to it. We did not pull out because the water went down.
Reason for returning?
Evidently, a group of local businessmen got together and put some pressure on our people in Moline, and they decided to reopen.
And in fact, the FEMA office is open through that door behind me at Alton High School. It will stay open until Thursday. The hours are 10 a.m. until 7 p.m. And really, not many people have been applying today, but then again, FEMA pulled out last week, so they may not know it is open again 10 to 7 from now until Thursday. Also today, in about an hour, Governor Jim Edgar will be arriving at another water distribution site to survey the damage here in Alton and to other towns in Illinois. We'll be catching up with the governor in a few minutes and have a report on his visit later on News Channel 5. For now, reporting live from Alton, I'm Lisa Ziegman, News Channel 5.
Officials warn motorists to slow down as they approach the area. This roadway is just north of the Chain of Rocks Bridge. Water is apparently seeping through the canal levee. Officials say water from the canal has caused this problem several times during the flood, but at this hour they do not think it's very serious.
Well, South St. Louis and
Mike, when the ground started buckling, authorities thought gravel would help, but Mother Nature was too powerful. Floodwaters oozed up through the sewers and streets and over the gravel. The downtown district was washed out of business. Most business owners, like Pat Maiden, have relocated, but he and his brother went back to their photo shop earlier today to see the damage.
Pretty disgusting. There was about a half-inch of water left in the store, and there were just all kinds of disgusting algae and mud and fish and everything else around in there. And all the stuff that was left in the store, which was things like display cases and so forth, had all congregated up toward the front of the store where it was trying to get out.
Maiden and others were outraged when the Federal Emergency Management Agency pulled out of Alton one day after businesses were flooded. We reported that last Wednesday. Today, FEMA was back. FEMA will be in town until Thursday. Now, here's something people haven't seen in a long time. It is the 1973 flood level marking on the ConAgra building. People haven't seen that marking for weeks. That means the river is now at 36.5 feet. There are many markings that show what the flood of '93 did in Alton, markings that are now history. As for when the business district will be cleaned up, well, quite frankly, they don't have a clue. Many of the businesses have relocated because they don't even think they're going to be up by Christmas. Keep in mind, by the time they move out all the gravel, they still have to check the damage of all the streets that were buckling up before the floodwaters came, so they have a lot of work to do. Reporting live from Alton, I'm Lisa Ziegman, News Channel 5.
Lisa, they do have some water service back online now. When will they get back fully online?
Dan, the running water was hooked back up this weekend, and again, it is to 95% of the area that lets them shower and go to the bathroom whenever they want to. The next step is going to be a boil order, and I think they're going to have that online by the end of this week. Following that, there's going to be a lot of testing, and as soon as they get the all clear for the uncontaminated water to come out of that tap, they think it's going to be about 2 weeks. They will give the go-ahead. Of course, they'll let us know, so we can let you know.
So maybe another 2 weeks before they have safe running water out of those taps.
Right.
Okay. Thank you, Lisa.
But there's more encouraging news tonight. Residents in Grafton, Illinois are beginning to see land again. Water is down to just over 33 feet in town, hard hit by the flood. Crews are now working to reopen a stretch of road that's been closed for several weeks. Workers hope to be able to open a portion of Springfield Street by Wednesday. Crews are also hard at work on Highway 40 in West St. Louis County. This time last week, the road was underwater after the Monarch levee break. Most of the roadway is clear of water, but now crews are working to clear debris and patch any damage to the highway. No word yet when it will be reopened to commuters. And hopefully many area roads and bridges closed because of the flooding will reopen sooner, since the rivers are receding faster than first predicted.
And our chief meteorologist, Bob Richards, is in the Doppler 5 Weather Center now with the latest figures. Nice to see those numbers going down, Bob.
It certainly is. I think in a lot of cases, the National Weather Service hydrologists that put this stuff together try to be a bit on the conservative side. Better to have it go down a lot faster than a lot slower than predicted. Latest numbers in, the latest measurements from the National Weather Service show that, again, in all cases, the rivers are down to 43.6 in St. Louis, still above the old-time record, 39.3 in Arnold, 35.2 feet in St. Charles, 33.2 in Grafton. and in all cases, they represent a significant drop. Anything, I guess any drop is significant at this point, but in most cases, especially from Grafton down to Arnold along the Mississippi, the river is dropping at about a foot a day, and it looks like that trend will continue over the next several days. As you can see, the 3-day forecasts show anywhere from 8 inches to a foot drop in the river each day over the next several days. Same thing along the Missouri River and along the Merrimack River in Arnold. The rivers should still continue to fall at a pretty good clip for the next several days. No heavy rains upstream, although there are a cluster or two of thunderstorms just to the north of St. Louis. We'll have more on that in the 5-day forecast.
Marquette and Prairie du Rocher.
Sign here, then I'll take you over.
1,900 agents are dispatched throughout the flooded area to aid victims in finding emergency housing and applying for loans and grants. The reviews are coming in.
Yes, we got enough money for 2 months' rent.
James Lee Witt, the new director of FEMA, believes his agency has reacted quickly to the floods, but conceded emergency housing could be better.
The problem we have is finding places to put trailers. We're going to have to build pads, we're going to have to hook up utilities, and so it takes some time to do that.
The mayor of Alexandria, Missouri, which is still underwater, complains that emergency housing remains a major problem. The mayor of Keithsburg, Illinois, another flooded town, gives FEMA high marks so far. Des Moines, Iowa, positive reviews here as well.
Some of the FEMA checks were delivered, hand-delivered to citizens within 3 days after they applied. So I can't think of anything quicker, even at the local government level, than a 3-day turnaround.
But in Alton, officials believe bureaucratic red tape slowed down pumping operations, dooming the city's water supply. FEMA insists it's here to work with you on flood recovery, and they urge you to call them with your questions.